Hi, my name is Nikki Ercolino, and I'm going to be discussing cognitive strategies for development. So, typically, the first thing we think of when we think of cognitive development is the brain, and that is not wrong. Cognitive development focuses on the process of learning rather than the overall product. That means we are focusing on developing skills that allow children to think about thinking and develop critical thinking skills. This gives them the chance to question their own learning process, be comfortable with themselves and how they learn best, and fine-tune those comprehension skills that will go with them as they begin to learn to read and to write. Cognitive development ranges anywhere from reading to writing to drawing to cutting paper, using fine motor skills, dramatic play, and holding conversations. The strategies I wanted to discuss in particular include repetition and visual aids. My observation took place in a preschool classroom where I observed my teacher using repetition as a skill to involve students in learning. My teacher did have a mixed classroom though, and she also had ELL students. I found repetition to be a useful tool in helping students learn the materials and the new vocabulary words she presented, but I realized that once the repetition game was over, very little of the information was retained, and the students would leave circle time remembering very little of what they learned. My thought then was to find an activity that would help the students apply the information rather than just presenting the information and hoping the students took something from it. In order to ensure these skills are retained, I might use visual aid and repetition. Because there are English language learning students in that classroom, we have to understand that one of the hardest things for English language learning students is to hold conversations with their peers, teachers, and other school personnel. Because that language barrier is there, English language learning students have a hard time being able to communicate simple needs such as using the restroom, not to mention picking up vocabulary words and being able to apply them when chances are they really don't know what they mean. The context has not been given. So in order to avoid that confusion, I figured visual aids would be one of the better ways to help students learn, especially when having English language learning students in a classroom. So for example, this teacher was talking about insects. She was going over the different parts of the insect body. There was the head, the abdomen, the thorax. She did go over antennae or feelers as for another term, and their legs. When you don't have a visual aid present when you're discussing these things, students are going to be confused, native language speakers and English language learners. Having that visual aid shows the students where the head is, the antennae, the abdomen, the thorax, etc., and then they'll be able to apply it. So one thing I thought about when applying these skills was to give an art project afterwards. You could have a couple of different sizes of paper cut up and have the students come over and glue them in the order that they want them to. Then once they've created their insect, drawn eyes, legs, antennae, whatever, you can then go over the different body parts with them. You can ask the student where the head is and have them point to that. You can then write on their paper the word head. So every time they look back at this picture, they see the head and they see the word, so they can connect the two. Same thing with the rest of the parts of the insects. This is going to help the student make those connections, and those context clues are definitely going to be easier for them to find with the use of visual aids. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.